Good morning. Today we're continuing with answering some of the questions that were asked, and we started speaking about Shabbat, how to keep Shabbat in an environment where people don't keep Shabbat at all or not on your level. We covered how to fulfill the mitzvot of Shabbat, and we covered a little bit how to stay away from prohibitions on Shabbat. We covered Kiddush, Havdalah, lighting candles, and what to do with electric lights. Today, I would like to discuss cooking on Shabbat. If the family keeps Shabbat and everybody participates, of course it's much easier. You use the blech, you've cooked all the food before, whatever needs to stay on the blech is on the blech from before Shabbat. Whatever is permissible to put on the blech on Shabbat, you can put on the blech on Shabbat. But what if you live with people that don't keep Shabbat and they don't want to keep the fire on the whole Shabbat, either because of safety or because they want to save gas or electricity? What if you have somebody in your household who wants to cook on Shabbat or who wants to warm up food on Shabbat, who might not want to use a blech or might want to warm up things on the blech that you're not supposed to warm up on the blech? Are you allowed to eat such food? What can you do in such a case? So to begin, let's understand what happens if a Jew does a melacha or rabbinic prohibition on Shabbat. Can another Jew benefit from it? So, if it was a Torah prohibition, for example, they actually cooked something, they lit fire, then the rule is that nobody can benefit from this work on Shabbat itself. And after Shabbat, the person who did it, if later he regrets and he says, you know what, I shouldn't have done it, I cooked this food on Shabbat, so then he himself cannot eat it forever. Other people can benefit from it after Shabbat. Now, what I just said about benefiting from food cooked on Shabbat itself is if a person did it intentionally. If a Jew cooks or does any other melacha deoraita from the Torah on Shabbat on purpose, no one can benefit from it on Shabbat, not he himself and not even other people. However, what if the person did this melacha unintentionally? Meaning he really wanted to keep Shabbat, but he forgot that it was Shabbat and they lit fire, or they cooked something, or they warmed up liquid. So then there is an argument between poskim. We, the Sephardim, are more strict about it. Some Ashkenazim are more lenient. And the difference is that we say that on Shabbat, just like something that was done intentional, even if it was done unintentionally, we cannot benefit from it. Not the person himself and not even others. Even if it wasn't done for you. Somebody made a mistake. But because a Jew made a mistake on Shabbat, no one can benefit from on Shabbat. After Shabbat, it's permitted, but on Shabbat not. However, Ashkenazim have a lenient opinion that if it was done unintentionally, other people can benefit from it. Which means if you instructed your siblings, your parents, and they said, yes, we're going to do it. And then they forgot. And again, not on purpose, out of forgetfulness, they turned on fire or they cooked something or any one of other melachot. So according to Ashkenazim, that lenient opinion, other people that it wasn't done for would be able to benefit from it. But for us, as Sephardim, we cannot benefit from it. And therefore, any Jew that does work according to Torah on Shabbat, even if it was done by mistake, we cannot benefit from it.
Is teshuvah on Shabbat when you break a malacha, is it the same as like regular teshuvah, like the 3 steps, and then you say that do it again?
The question is teshuvah on Shabbat different than any other teshuvah? Of course, depending on severity of the sin, depending on the intent, the teshuvah has to change, but the basic teshuvah is the same for any sin. Acknowledging that what you did, asking forgiveness, and taking upon yourself not to repeat it. You had a question?
When you say not benefit at all, or not benefit for Sephardic, like if someone touched the cholent and stirred it.
We're going to speak about prohibitions that are rabbinic or doubtful prohibition, because stirring a cholent, you don't know if it was fully cooked or not. If it was fully cooked, then it's only a rabbinic prohibition. If it wasn't fully cooked, then it could be a Torah prohibition. So let me address that. So again, if a Torah prohibition was transgressed, then no Jew is allowed to benefit from it, even if it was done unintentionally. However, if a rabbinic prohibition was transgressed, then it depends. If a rabbinic prohibition was transgressed on purpose, then no Jew is allowed to benefit from it on Shabbat. However, if a rabbinic prohibition was transgressed unintentionally, by mistake, or through forgetfulness, then one can benefit from it on Shabbat. What are examples of rabbinic prohibitions? One example is doing business on Shabbat, meaning if somebody went to the store and bought something, and they didn't know that it was Shabbat, or they didn't know that it's not allowed, so after the fact, they brought it to you, since it was only a rabbinic prohibition, and they don't know about Shabbat, they didn't transgress Shabbat on purpose, so you would be able to benefit from it. Another example of rabbinic prohibition is moving muktzeh. If somebody moved an object that we are not supposed to move, but moving an object did not involve actual melacha, it was only rabbinically prohibited because it may lead to doing a melacha. For example, moving a pen. Moving a pen or pencil is not prohibited according to Torah, it's only prohibited rabbinically because it might lead you to write. So, if somebody moves an object that they were not supposed to move, and now that created a situation of benefit for you, whatever that may be, you are allowed to benefit from it if they did it unintentionally. Yeah, again, if it's a Torah prohibition, nobody is allowed to benefit. If it's a rabbinic prohibition done intentionally, also nobody can benefit. But if it's a rabbinic prohibition done unknowingly or out of forgetfulness, then one is allowed to benefit from it. Some define it a little bit differently. Some define it whether the prohibited action was done with the object or to the object. Meaning, for example, when you buy an object, you didn't actually change the object. Or you transfer the object in a car, you didn't change the object. However, if you cook food, then you actually changed the food. Yes?
I have two questions. So, taking muktzah things off the table, letters you're not supposed to touch, or pens, can you still use that table? It was
Of course. Yes. If it is the example that is given now, if you have table and on it there are, before Shabbat you forgot to remove pens, pencils, phones, other objects, and somebody came and forgot it was Shabbat, removed it, the table, you can use the table anyway, because even when the muktzah objects were on the table, you could still put your plate on the table and use it. So they didn't do anything to the table that would make it forbidden. The question is, can the table be moved? So that's a different question, because anything that supports a muktzah object remains the status of muktzah support. We call it basis, even after the muktzah was removed for the entirety of Shabbat. So even if somebody took off the muktzah object on Shabbat, but the table still considered basis, and you shouldn't be moving it. But to actually use the table is not a problem, even if they did it on purpose.
And you can't stir cholent? That's a thing? I didn't know.
About stirring food on the stove or on the blech on Shabbat, there are two problems. One is that perhaps there are some uncooked parts in the pot, and by stirring it, you will bring those uncooked parts into the part of the cholent or the pot where it will cook. That's one problem. And even if you mixed it well and you tried it and you know for sure it's completely cooked, there's another prohibition that it looks like you're cooking, since it's on the stove. And whether it's stove or plata, but since it's on the heating element and you're stirring it, it looks like you are cooking. So what you're supposed to do is take it off and then mix it and then put it back on. Where we are allowed, if you know that it's fully cooked, you're allowed to serve it directly from the blech, but not to stir it. So now let me give you some examples of what can happen in a family.
Rabbi Yuhanan, I'm sorry, you said you can serve it from the blech when the fire's right underneath it?
Yes, as long as there is the blech, there's that separation, you can serve it, but not stir it.
That's not only, I thought that was only for soup, from what I heard before, from what you were saying. That's for also any meal.
If you know it's fully cooked, yes, you can serve it. Soup, as you serve it, is going to get stirred anyway, so that's fine. But even solid food, if it's just serving, it's okay. But stirring, you have to remove it.
Soup you can keep on the block to serve?
Soup you can
Stir it anyways?
keep on the blech as long as it's fully cooked and serve it. But of course, to avoid issues, and again, if it's Friday night and you're not planning to keep it overnight, there's no point in keeping it on the blech. You just take it off and then serve it.
But then you have to like hold it with one hand.
If you want to put it back on, yes, that's why either you can hold it in your hand as you're serving it, or you move it away from direct fire on the side of the blech, so this way it's still on the blech, so it's not a problem moving it to a hotter part, but at the same time you don't have to hold it in your hand. Okay, now let me give you an example. We are not allowed to cook on Shabbat. Of course, therefore, if somebody cooks food, raw food, even if it's edible, but they cook it on Shabbat, you cannot benefit from it. So if you visit somebody and you know they cooked it, whether on purpose or by mistake, any food on Shabbat, you cannot use it, cannot eat it. Whether it's solid or liquid, even if they made tea for you, cannot use it if they turned on fire or they cooked it on Shabbat. Now, we also have prohibition to warm up liquids on Shabbat. Solids that were cooked previously, we can reheat on Shabbat using a blech. Liquids, we don't reheat because we rule stringently that by liquids there is cooking after cooking, that once a liquid cools down, you cannot cook it again. However, since it is an argument among early poskim, among Rishonim, whether cooked liquids can be recooked or not, we follow the more stringent opinion that they cannot be, it's prohibited. However, since there is a lenient opinion among Rishonim that allows liquids to be recooked, therefore, if somebody forgot and put soup on fire, meaning it was fully cooked soup, and they put it on the blech and they reheated it on Shabbat, b'diavad, if it was done unintentionally, you can eat it because it was fully cooked. And there are opinions that allow it lichatchila. So even though lichatchila we follow the more stringent opinions, but if it was done, we allow it to be used.
One question, Rabbi. Let's say there's a key hook and then there's muktzah keys on it, and then there's like regular like Shabbos keys, like with no muktzah, like no car keys or anything. Can I use that same hook to like put on my like my regular key, like on Shabbat, even though there's
Yeah. Even though if you have a hook on a wall and you currently that hook is holding keys from your car, which are muktzah, you can still use that hook for your house keys. Yes, that's not a problem. So what I just said about being able to eat soup on Shabbat that was reheated on a blech by mistake, that's only as a one-time thing. You cannot now allow that person to do it. You cannot say to your parents, you know what, even though it's prohibited, but you should know that if you do it, I'll be able to eat it, and encourage them to do it. If by mistake they did it one time, or you were a guest somewhere and they forgot, then it's okay.
I think I remember hearing an opinion that if you put it on a warming tray before it turns on, then it's okay or something like that.
There is such opinion also, yes, that if, let's say, your parents don't want to leave fire or electricity on Shabbat, so at least encourage them to get a electric hot plate with a timer, and at least explain to them that they should set the timer certain times, and they should put food on it before it turns on, and then when it turns on, it's similar to the concept of kosher light switch, that at the time when you turn it, you switch it, nothing is going on, and only sometime later. It's not ideal, but in times of difficulty, you can rely on it. So here also, at the time when you put it on the hot plate is off, so you're just putting it on like a counter. That's permitted, and then it's going to turn on by itself. So some allow that.
I have two questions. I'm still confused about challah for Shabbos. When I go to the Chabad, it's already up there. When I try to do it at home, I'm cooking it I put all my raw ingredients into the crock pot, and then the next day it's cooked. So my cooking during, I rarely do it, so I haven't done this in years. But just so I'm clear, does it need to be completely cooked before I put it in the crock pot before candlelighting? I don't understand. Because I've just avoided doing it.
You are using open flame, if you're cooking on open flame and you want to leave your pot on open flame before Shabbat, then it should be edible already. Or it has to have raw meat in it, one or the other. Because if it's completely edible, then you're not going to worry that it's not getting cooked fast enough, and you're not going to be tempted to turn the fire higher. And similarly, if you have a raw piece of meat in there, it shows that I'm not planning to eat it soon. It's for tomorrow morning, and therefore I'm calm because until tomorrow morning it's going to have plenty of time to cook. So if you use open flame, that's the restriction that you have. The food has to be, before Shabbat, the food has to be either already edible or raw. However, if you're using a blech or hot plate, you don't have that restriction, and you can put food in any state. Yeah, because the presence of the blech will remind you that it's Shabbat, and you're not gonna raise the flame, or the hot plate will remind you. So if you are using a blech or hot plate, you can put anything on it before Shabbat. As long as you put before Shabbat, it can continue cooking on Shabbat. And one more point, what you mentioned, that you can use a timer on a hot plate and put food there before it turns on, that's only if the food is fully cooked. But you cannot use it to actually cook something on Shabbat. You cannot put raw food on a timer and then it's going to turn on. That's not permitted.
What about the thing about aim bishul, achar bishul? So like,
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. If it's solid, we're allowed to reheat it. And if it's liquid, we hold that you shouldn't be reheating it. But if it was done by mistake, you can use it.
Question. Where's the limit between something being considered liquid and not? Because
Yeah, so there are different opinions. Some hold that what is considered liquid, anything that has any visible liquid in it. And some say, no, we go after majority. So if you need, you can follow the more lenient opinion and go after majority.
the majority is a solid like a fish, and then there's like running water coming out of the fish.
And if you are able, it's better to follow the more strict opinion. And an example of fish, you can take the fish out and warm it up separately. And once it's hot, you can serve it with the liquid or without liquid. But something like cholent, where there is no clear liquid, it's all mixed, but it's a little bit liquidy, but no free-flowing liquid, then it's more easier to follow the lenient opinion, the majority. The Ashkenazim are more strict about it, the Sephardim are more lenient, but even for Sephardim it's good to follow the more strict opinion, that it should be not only majority, but there should be no visible liquid.
one more question. So the crock pot itself would be considered like an open flame or like a black?
The crock pot, according to Sephardim, is considered like a blech, like a hot plate. We spoke about it in our laws of Shabbat, that there are opinions that consider crock pot as an insulator because it's covered by all sides and it has a heating element. And therefore, in order to solve that issue, they either raise the inner pot a little bit by putting either 3 stones or balls of aluminum foil to raise the pot a little bit, or we put one layer of aluminum foil and make it stick out on sides a little bit. This will again show that there is separation between the inner pot and outer pot, that it shouldn't be considered insulating. But otherwise, crock pot is a good option to use on Shabbat, and a crock pot is also a good option because you can put it on a timer, and when the time for lunch comes, it's going to turn off, and then you don't have problems taking off, putting back, serving from it because it's already off. Also saves electricity, and also in the summer, crock pot will save you the air conditioning bill, because from, let's say, 12 until 9 in the evening, for those 9 hours, the crock pot is not working. Okay. Now, as we mentioned earlier, that if you do have somebody at home who doesn't keep Shabbat, it's important to have a respectful discussion and have this conversation and explain that since we have different lifestyles, if we try to insist on doing things exactly how I want and I'm not going to help the other, it's going to cause a lot of issues and fights. And it's wiser to try to accommodate each other. Again, that I will not bother you, and you please don't interfere with me. That wherever possible, please help me. Don't turn off the light if I need it. Don't turn on the light. Let's keep certain lights on. Let's use timers. Let's forego certain pleasures that we would otherwise use just out of respect for the other. And whatever we can prepare in advance, enough food, enough tea, enough hot water, whatever needs to be done, think ahead and prepare for your family whatever they may need. If they need hot water, get an urn, electric urn, fill it up beforehand with hot water, explain to them how to make tea, if necessary prepare the tea essence, get instant coffee that was already considered pre-cooked before, so it doesn't matter how they make it. If necessary, maybe you can even get instant tea. This way, like iced tea, this way it's considered pre-cooked, and you can, just like coffee, you can put it directly into the first cup of hot water. Create the atmosphere that they wouldn't stumble. Hide unnecessary electronics, unnecessary muktzah items, prepare all the food, unscrew the light bulb in the refrigerator, and if it was forgotten, or you're visiting, if you're visiting relatives and they don't unscrew their light bulb, so the food doesn't become forbidden. What they're doing is wrong, but just the fact that they're opening a refrigerator and they're taking out food, the food does not become forbidden. So you would be able to eat that food if they took it out from refrigerator. You cannot ask them to take it out, but if they did it, you can eat the food, because again, nothing was done to the food, but only to the refrigerator. Okay. Now we're going to continue to the next topic. If you have any questions about Shabbat, you can ask. Otherwise, the next topic is blessings for complex foods. We know that ideally we have to make a specific blessing for specific food. Even though there is a general blessing of shehakol that covers most of the foods, and even though there are certain blessings that if we make them by mistake, they will cover most other foods, but still lechatchila we should use a specific blessing for specific food. For example, even though if we say adama on something that's a fruit, an etz, it will cover it. If I say borei pri adama on an apple, I fulfilled my obligation, I can eat it. However, ideally I should say borei pri ha'etz on the apple. If I say borei minei mizonot on a potato, I fulfill my obligation and I can eat the potato, but ideally I should say borei pri adama on a potato.
How did that fulfill that?
Mizana fulfills, but
Yeah.
Yeah, we have three blessings that if you make them by mistake, they cover most foods. That is shehakol covers most foods, adama covers most foods, and mizonot covers most foods. Adama covers most foods that grow from the ground, which means any food that is a fruit or a vegetable or processed fruit, processed vegetables, as long as its source is from the ground, even mizonot, adama will cover it.
also if you ate a piece of, like this would be, if I said adama,
Because it's true, it is, mizonot is also from adama, also from the ground. But of course that is only b'diavad. We cannot use these general blessings. If we say shehakol, it covers most foods. If we say mizonot, mizonot means something that sustains us. And therefore, anything that sustains, even though specifically we refer to 5 grains and rice, but anything that has calories, mizonot covers, except for water and salt. Water and salt you cannot say mizonot on, but everything else, even meat, if you say mizonot, it covers it. But again, this is not ideal. Ideally, you have to say specific blessing. So it's easy if it's a separate item. You find out what the blessing is. There is a text messaging service that you text them the name of the food and they text you back the blessing.
there's also an app.
There's an app. For blessings, yes. And there are books that tell you what blessing to make.
I don't know if I mentioned this before, but when I was in high school, my teacher said that shahako could cover, if you make them, like, let's say, like, there's an order of brachot, let's say I'm eating food and I say shahako, that means it's going to cover for everything that I'm about to eat, even if it's not shahako. Is that true?
Yes, but ideally you should make a specific blessing.
Even if I said shahako first, I could still say that I don't.
Depends if you kept it in mind. If by mistake you made it, then you don't make another blessing. If you made the wrong blessing by mistake, but it covers it, that's it. You eat the food. You cannot make a new blessing.
I have a drink and the food didn't come yet in the restaurant.
If you keep it in mind, yes, if you say shakol on a drink and you know food is coming and you keep it in mind, then it covers the food.
But if I have a negative intent and I say I'm not keeping it in mind,
then it doesn't cover, right? If you have intent not to cover something, then it doesn't cover it. Let me just get the phone number for the Bracha Guide. It's 612-276-2467.
612.
612-276-2467. You text it with just the name of the food, and it sends back what bracha to make before and after. No, it has to be a simple, just like a one-word name.
Okay, so but what about cereal?
No Bukharian food, only simple English
Bukhari
names.
food, let's say you have
Yeah, so that's what we're going to speak about now. What if the food is complicated? It's not just a one-item thing. So if it's a mixture, but it's mixture of small pieces, then we go after majority. For example, you have a salad, and in the salad you put some fruits, and it's chopped up. So then we go after the majority. If majority are vegetables, cucumbers, tomatoes, lettuce, then we say adama, and it covers the entire salad. Even though the salad may have some fruits in it, it's all covered by one blessing.
What about kani salad where it's like shredded kani and cucumbers? What do you say?
So again, anything shredded, anything chopped, anything mixed together so that every spoon I take, there are parts of both, then we say the blessing on the majority.
Is it wrong to say, like pick out and say?
So, if you separate the majority and you create a situation where it's separate, then you can say a different blessing. But you can only do it before you made the original blessing. If you say Borei Pri Adama on such a salad, and that already covered everything in it, now it would be wrong to take out a fruit and say a blessing. But if you separate it before, then that would be okay. Now, there are some cases where even though it's a mixture, we don't follow the majority. And that is if the mixture contains mizonot. If it contains 5 grains that we're supposed to say mizonot, we consider it as the main ingredient, even if it's the minority. So, for example, you're eating cholent, made from barley, cooked barley with potatoes, and it's all mixed together. Barley, potatoes, onions, carrots. Even though the potatoes and carrots and onions are the majority and the barley is only minority, you still say mizonot on the cholent. Or sometimes you have candy that has flour in it. So if the flour was added for taste, not just for keep things together, then you would say mizonot, even though the majority of it is sugar.
Some candy from mizonot has flour?
Yeah.
That is because it's shahako, it's like sweet and it's whatever.
So therefore, something like Twizzlers that has flour, you would say mizonot, even though it looks like a regular candy and you're eating it for sugar.
Did you say al-mihya after?
If you eat enough, but you have to know how much flour there is. If you calculate and it's enough.
Oh my gosh.
Now, yeah.
In the example of the challenge, so if you say mezonot, then you don't say adama on the potato.
Right, you don't say adama on a potato unless, that's the next example, if in a mixture, each item is identifiable and large, so then it would be proper to separate, take a little bit of barley, say mizonot, then take the potato and say adama. But if the potatoes are small pieces, and every time you take a spoon of the cholent, you have some barley and some potatoes, even though potatoes are majority, you say mizonot and it covers potatoes. But if you have large potatoes that you didn't cut up finely, then it's proper to say mizonot on barley and then take that potato separately and say adama on it, and then take a piece of meat separately and say shahakol on it.
If it's defined, you're saying?
The same thing for Bukharian dishes like plov. Since the pieces of meat are large, you would say mizonot on rice. If the carrots are mixed into rice, you wouldn't say bracha on carrots. If the carrots are separate on top and they're big and easily identifiable and you can take them separate, you say adama on carrots. And if meat is big, you say shakol on meat. However, if you're eating bachsh where meat is small pieces, then you just say mizonot and it covers everything, even the meat, because rice is the majority.
Like things like soup or like poultry, like let's say you get the big piece of meat and then you like make it smaller and then eat it, so you have to say that.
Yes, yeah. So for an example, soup, chicken soup. So since you have the liquid and the chicken is shehakol, and then the vegetables are adama, so if the vegetables are chopped up and they're mixed with chicken or meat, so then you just say shehakol. But if you have large pieces of vegetable, then it's proper to take out the vegetable first, say adama, and then take out a piece of meat and say shehakol. Yes.
There's a hierarchy, or there's an order of the bracha. So if I had like a meal that had fruit, vegetables, grain, meat, and it really is separate.
Yes.
What would you say? Like,
So
if I had a hives.
yes. So if you have a few foods that you're about to eat,
And you don't want to eat bread to cover.
first, yes, and you're not eating bread to cover everything. First, you say blessing on mizonot, on pastry. Then you say blessing if you have wine or grape juice. Then you say blessing on fruits. Then you say blessing on vegetables. And then you say shehakol. You go from more specific to more general.
Adama was first and then the fruit.
First the fruit, then adama. Some say the fruit and the vegetables are very similar. So if you happen to say it on vegetable, it's okay. You can say fruit afterwards. But some say that the fruit should be first, since it is more specific. There are more rules about it. You need to actually learn it in depth. But let's just take a few more examples, like sushi. Some people say that since majority of sushi is rice, so you just say mizonot and eat. However, since some people are not actually eating sushi for rice, the main reason you eat sushi is not to eat a lot of rice, but rather because you're interested in what's inside. Therefore, I feel that it's more proper to find other foods to make blessing on. If you know that inside the sushi there will be vegetables, so find something that has adama, take a piece of cucumber or disassemble one piece of sushi and take etz, take adama, take a little bit rice, or even better, take a cookie separately and say mizonot, so that if later you want to eat a pastry, there's a question if mizonot on rice will cover mizonot on cookie. So if you had it in mind, it will cover, but still ideally you should say mizonot on a cookie and then keep rice in mind. And take a piece of fish or a drink, say shahakol, and once you cover all the blessings, then you can actually eat the entire sushi piece.
If you ate rice in the sushi, and just a little rice, would you still do al-hamakia at the end?
Even though we say borei minei mizonot on rice, but rice is not from the 5 grains, and therefore we say borei nefashot after rice. Yes. Any other examples? Yes.
Well, a different topic. What if you're, let's say, drinking, and then you move from one room to another, and you didn't have it in mind that you're going to move? Do you have to say that?
So, lechatchila, ideally, you should start a meal and finish the meal in the same room. But Yavad, since there are different opinions, we always go lenient with blessings, and therefore, even though there are opinions that if you go to another room, you will have to make a new blessing, but since there are opinions that say that anything under the same roof, even if it's a different floor, but if it's under the same roof, it's considered one location, we don't make a blessing. But that's not ideal, because there are those that would say that you have to. So again, if possible, you just make a blessing and finish the drink, finish the food, say after blessing, and then move. But if not, and you do move, then you don't repeat a blessing. Also, for Sephardim, if you take a drink or food and you carry it with you, even outside, you don't repeat a blessing. So if you take a cup of coffee and you start drinking it, and then you go to the car, you don't make another blessing. Then you go to another house, you don't make another blessing. Since it's always with you, it's considered that you can constantly eating or drinking it, and you don't make another blessing.
Even if you didn't have it in mind, right?
Yeah, even if you didn't have it in mind. But again, ideally, you should have everything in mind. As when you make a blessing for mizonot, you should keep in mind anything mizonot I'm going to decide to eat from now until I finish my meal by saying a blessing is included. Anything that is shahakol is going to be included in my shahakol bracha. And anything
So can you have in mind and say
that will be included in my current bracha, I'll keep in mind forever until I make after blessing.
you say even if I go outside I'm having this in mind?
Certain things it's not going to help, because if you change location completely, you leave your food and you didn't leave any friends, and you go out for extended period of time, that's it. It's considered your meal finished. When you come back, you have to make a new blessing.
Say go out for like a minute, stay for the garbage.
Yeah.
and stuff, and
So
then-
again, a lot of these things that are subject to machloket, to argument, you will not have to make a blessing. So for example, you're driving in a car and you stop by to pick up mail. You come out of the car, you get mail, you sit back in the car. So again, for Sephardim, you don't make another blessing. If somebody came, you came outside just to greet them, to give them something, and then you came back inside, since you knew it was just for a short time, you come back, you don't make another blessing. But ideally, you shouldn't be putting yourself in such a situation. Yes?
What if you have like a Dunkin' Donuts or drink and you start drinking it at that location, then you move to the car, you go to work, what is
So again, according to Sephardim, as long as it's in your hand and you're moving with it, you don't make another blessing. There will be opinions that will say once you go to a different location, not under the same roof, even if you're carrying it, you will have to make a blessing. So you would have to find out for who you want to follow and follow that opinion, because there are different opinions. By Sephardim, following Rav Ovadia Yosef, he is strict about making unnecessary blessings. So therefore, if there is any opinion that will say you shouldn't make a blessing, he'll say don't make a blessing.
So just like Tara was saying, I drink the coffee, like I do the same thing, I'll have coffee in the car, I'm sipping. I have like a 7-minute walk from my car to my job with that same cup. I say, for shows, in the car and then say the bracha again when I get to the school if I want.
Yes,
if I
that
don't
would
drink
be-
the coffee on my way.
Right, that would be ideal if you stop, you say, that's it, I'm done, I don't need to drink anymore, I'm not thirsty, you say the bracha.
I'm thirsty, but I know that I'm walking with the coffee now, and I
Yeah.
have to say another bracha when I get there. So
Yes, if
then
you-
I have to say
If you finished your drinking session and you said the after blessing,
okay.
now if you want to drink again, you would have to.
Wait until I get to school.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
What if I'm in the same building, I'm in a certain room eating either shahakul food or al-mihya food, right? Or even birkat hamazon. Am I
Yes.
allowed to like come out of the room and make the after bracha in another room in the same building, or that's
If you finished food, you ideally supposed to make the after blessing in the same room. If you left, then it depends. If it was shehakol or borei nefashot, then you're allowed to not to come back. You're allowed to say the after blessing where you are. If it's mizonot ala michya, you should ideally come back. Or if it's birkat hamazon, you should come back. But if you left unintentionally, meaning you thought you just left for a moment, but then you were not able to come back. So since you didn't do it intentionally, you can stay wherever you are and make a blessing there. Or you forgot that you need to make a blessing and you left. But if you left on purpose, then you have to come back.
even for
No, for mizonot and for birkat hamazon. Bediavad, if you were not able to come back, then you say the birkat hamazon or la michya in wherever place you are.
What if you said a wrong blessing? You confused the fruit or vegetable.
The first blessing.
If you said
Yeah. So again, if you say a more general blessing for more specific, that covers it. But if you said more specific for more general, that doesn't work. For example, if you say borei pri adama for an apple, that covers it because apples grow from the ground. But if you say borei pri ha'etz on a potato, that's not going to cover it because potatoes don't grow on trees.
What about nuts?
So nuts are they grow on trees, and therefore you have to say etz. If you say by mistake adama on nuts, then it covers it.
Just only know that's hadama.
Peanuts are an exception because they don't grow on trees; they grow like potatoes in the ground, and therefore peanuts are adama. If you say borei pri ha'etz on peanuts, then it's not going to cover it.
There are certain fruits you have to say adama on though, no? Is it like
There are certain fruits that are an anomaly, like bananas. Watermelon is not even similar to a tree.
Right.
But bananas, at least on the outside, or pineapple, bananas, these you say adama. Yes,
Kiwi is ha'etz, right?
kiwi is ha'etz. But again, use that phone number. It's not instant. Maybe if you have an app, what's the name of the app? Brachas.
What about avocado?
Avocado is etz. Yeah. If you want instant, just use the app or search online. Brachas.
Brachot.org also.
Brachot.org, or
Brachas with it.
you text, and then a few minutes later you're gonna get a text message back with the blessing for before and after.
I had something that I bought. Rebbetzin Muscat did a class at the American Jewish Heritage about 5 years ago, and she talked about a bracha bee, and you can get the book. So I went to Crown Heights and they have it in the bookstore. It has everything about all the brachas. You just look it up and find out. It is called a bracha bee.
Mhm.
The spelling bee for teachers.
Yeah,
They have
my
a bracha bee.
sister used to
And
do that.
yeah, but they have the book, and it was so easy just to flip through. I used to keep it in my kitchen, just to
Yes,
look at it.
yes.
Very, very handy.
Yes, so many books on halacha, at the end they have a whole index and list of all the foods. Laws of Brachas, there is a good book, Laws of Brachas by Feldheim, and there is a good book, Laws of Brachas by Art Scroll. Both are very good. Both are for Ashkenazim, but majority of it is going to be similar for Sephardim as well, and both of them have at the end a list of all the blessings. Okay, any other questions about this or any other topics? Something short?
When it comes to like security, like, you know they have those Ring doorbells that whenever someone's in the vicinity of your house, it makes a sound. You have to turn that off for Shabbos, which I thought you did. But
Ideally, you should turn it off. If it makes noise or if it shows you who is there, ideally you should turn it off, or at least cover. Similarly with cameras, you should turn off, or if you don't want to turn them off for security reasons, at least turn off the monitor so that you shouldn't actually be benefiting from it directly on Shabbat. It's okay if it saves the images on the hard drive, but if the monitor is off, that's better.
I know somebody who had a bar mitzvah, and the shul had security cameras, and it was on Shabbat the bar mitzvah. So the mother, after the bar mitzvah, got a hold of the security cameras, and she got a recording of the bar mitzvah. Is that okay?
After the fact, you can use the recording, but you shouldn't be posing in front of the security camera on Shabbat.
Do you have to turn off your cell phone for Shabbat? Can you leave it?
You don't have to turn off your cell phone, but it's recommended because you shouldn't forget. If it starts ringing or it's going to tempt you to look at it, the text messages that will appear. So the best is to turn it off. Or especially if it has alarm and then Shabbat morning is going to ring and you're going to forget. And yeah.
You talked about ways during Shabbos to lubricate your lips, and I'm noticing now my hands are getting very, very dry, especially for the Yom Tov and all that. What? Can I see what you were talking about? You've explained it. Like there's some kind of roller, something.
Yeah. I don't have it with me, but it's called a roll-on.
Can we buy them here?
You can surely buy them. Yes.
You'll bring it and we can buy them.
Sure. It's a glass jar, a small, like a chopstick,
With a little rolling ball,
but
right?
instead of solid, you fill it up with any oil you want,
And then I could roll.
avocado oil or any other oil, and you apply it to your lips because it's liquid, so it's
Just put avocado oil directly.
you can put it directly.
I'm allowed to dab my finger
For
out?
sure, yes.
I didn't know I was allowed to do
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
No,
for
it's
sure.
my skin, I thought.
But this way it's just more convenient. You carry it in your pocket or pocketbook.
I could do that.
Yes.
Olive oil and just do on your hand.
Yes, you can use olive oil. Yes. Some people take a little cup with a cover, they put a little bit oil, and then you can keep it in every room in your house. And
So I can pour olive oil onto my hands and just do this?
yes, if is anything liquid, you can. Now the only
But not lotion like the pump.
right, the only restriction, again, anything liquidy you can use.
But lotion is liquidy.
Yes, if it's liquidy, you can use.
Oh yeah, I could use lotion? Lotion
If it's liquidy. But the restriction is it shouldn't look like healing on Shabbat. So if your hands are really chapped,
That's right.
that's a problem. So you should get into a habit of applying it every day. Once you apply it every day, then it's fine.
So lotion or pump I can use if it's liquid.
If it's liquidy.
But you have to do it every day because
I'm gonna do it every day.
Rabbi, I asked him to teshuva process like yesterday, I broke Shabbat by accident a couple of times. What's the teshuva process?
Well, if somebody breaks Shabbat by mistake, you have to see why.
Like I turned off the light.
Yeah, so
It's bouncy. I'm like, oh my god, what's wrong?
So again, if it's turning the light, so then you have to tape the light or you have to cover it. You can't just say, I'm never going to do it again, because you cannot promise for something that you might forget. Since to begin with it happened through forgetfulness. So you have to take precaution and cover it. If it's bouncy, so you have to make sure you either put away the whole rolls or you pre-cut
I
them.
already cut the pre-cut bouncy. That's the funny part.
Yeah.
But what's it called?
Oh, sorry, thank you.
Something I wanted to say.
So for a Yom Tov I can also use lotion?
Yes, again, it has to be liquidy. What's considered liquidy?
Yes.
So there are different opinions. For Sephardim, anything you put on a surface and then you tilt the surface and it's gonna run, that's good. If it's gonna stay in one place, then you cannot use it.
I have a question. Do you have any suggestions for like your skin? Because I always have a problem with like playing with my hair. It always falls out. Playing with my skin, it comes off. Like, do you have any suggestions for like how do I like just to take the lights? Do you have any like how do I like stop with my skin and stuff?
There are methods. Basically, what you have to do, like we, whenever the seasons change and we have to change what we say in our prayer, you have to develop a habit. You have to develop a habit of the new behavior. And so here also you have to develop a habit, and there is a long way to develop it, and there's a quicker way. So the quicker way to develop it is the method is called NLP, and Neuro Linguistic Programming, and there are books on it, and there are professionals who do it. You tell them what new habit you would like to develop, and they lead you through a short process of what to say to yourself repeatedly, and that's also good. And that becomes a new habit. So there are books that describe it. For example, for people who bite their lips and make noises or touch themselves or scratch themselves, you can reprogram your mind to have a new habit. So you can look into that.
Can I go on YouTube and find it?
You can try.
When it comes to brushing your teeth on Shabbat, I heard there was Shabbos toothpaste.
I heard you could actually use like regular toothpaste. Rabbi Yosef says you could use regular toothpaste.
I think you have to get the
Yeah,
liquid one.
put the salad.
So the best way, if you want to actually use the toothbrush, is to use mouthwash. You have to fill your mouth with mouthwash, take a dry toothbrush, and then put it into your mouth and brush your teeth like that. And then you just take the toothbrush, put it down without washing it, without squeezing, without preparing for next time, and then just rinse your mouth. This way, you don't have problem with toothpaste and squeezing the toothbrush, because you use the dry one and you're not squeezing it. And whatever you squeeze in the mouth, it's already in the liquid, and that doesn't count.
What if, you have an electric toothbrush for every day, and then I have like a regular toothbrush for Shabbat. So my regular toothbrush sits for a whole week. I want to take it before I put it in my mouth. I want to rinse it in the water. I can't do that.
So then it's maybe before Shabbat, put it in a cup with mouthwash.
Okay, and then it's after
And
it's
then
coming out of my mouth. I can't rinse it in the
and
water
then
again?
put it back into the cup of mouthwash, and then at the end of Shabbat, you just spill that mouthwash, rinse the toothbrush, and that's it.
But there are toothpastes that are very liquidy.
There are toothpaste. You can use them, but why buy an extra thing if you can use something that's already in your house?
But I think mentally I feel like it cleans better. I don't
No, it doesn't. I actually once read an article about research they did, and they said toothpaste doesn't help any. It only gives you pleasant smell in your mouth. But whether you brush with toothpaste or water, it's the same effect.
Right, I've been using water, and then my last time I filled my mouth with water, and I cleaned my toothbrush in my mouth, in a way, to rinse it with water, so I don't have to rinse it under the water.
That's also a good option if
So why can't you rinse it in the faucet?
because then you're preparing it for after Shabbat, and that's not allowed. So if you just drop it into the cup with mouthwash or with water, that's okay, because that's just your storage place.
But I remember you texted me once. You said I could rinse it. So what does that mean?
That's only if you're planning to use it again that same
So
day.
Friday night.
For
and I
example,
could rinse
Friday
it,
night
and
you-
Saturday.
Right. But then you shouldn't squeeze the toothbrush to extract the water. You just rinse it and put it down like that.
Okay. So
Can you floss if you pre-cut?
Either pre-cut or the flossers. You can floss your teeth, but if it doesn't bleed, right? And you can use a toothpick. Same idea, as long as your gums don't bleed.
am I allowed to play with my hair then if it naturally just like stuff out, like my hair comes out, or
As long as you don't pull on it and it's only the hair that already got separated that's coming out. But if through your playing with it you actually pull out hair, then that's a problem. And then maybe make a pony something that you shouldn't have hair in front of you. Okay, so Shavua Tov. Next week we are off,
we're off.
and so in 2 weeks from now, because there is Shabbaton. Okay, Shavua Tov, all the best.